The night was quiet and the air carried a strange calm, as if the world itself knew that something inside me was breaking, something so deep that even the silence felt heavy around my shoulders, and I kept walking down the lonely road that stretched in front of me like an endless thread of memories and regrets, and every step I took felt like I was leaving behind a part of myself, a part that had stayed far too long in a place where my soul had forgotten how to breathe. And it was not just a journey away from a home or a city, it was a journey away from a weight that had grown slowly over years until it pressed against my ribs like a shadow determined to swallow me whole. And as I moved forward, the walls of the past tried to rise again around me, gripping me, pulling me, reminding me of everything I once thought I deserved. But I knew that if I turned back even for a moment, I would lose whatever strength I had managed to gather tonight. And it had taken me years to learn that there comes a moment when staying is more dangerous than leaving, and when silence hurts more than the truth, and when love turns into a cage built gently but tightly around the heart. For so long I convinced myself that things would change, that people would change, that the storms inside me would settle and the storms outside me would calm. But every sunrise felt heavier than the last, and every night felt colder, and I kept shrinking into myself, pretending that I was still strong, pretending that I was still whole, pretending that I could carry the weight without breaking. But there was a thin, invisible crack inside me that kept growing and growing until it became a wound that refused to heal. And I realized that survival is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, sometimes it is just a decision made in the middle of the night when no one is watching, a decision to walk away before the pieces of your spirit shatter beyond repair. And as I walked farther from the house that held my tears, my fears, my unspoken dreams, I could feel something loosening inside me, something like a chain that had been wrapped around my heart for far too long. The streetlights flickered above me and the dim glow stretched across the empty road like fragile lines of hope, guiding me step by step. And I kept replaying moments I had tried so hard to forget, the moments when my voice was too soft and the world around me too loud, the moments when I held in my pain because I believed that staying strong meant staying silent, the moments when I let people walk over my softness as if kindness was a weakness and not a quiet kind of strength. But tonight something inside me had finally awakened, something brave, something fierce, something desperate to survive. And I knew that if I stayed one more day, one more hour, one more breath, I would lose myself completely and survival would slip out of my hands like smoke disappearing into the night. The memories drifted around me like faded echoes, the arguments, the broken promises, the weight of expectations that were never mine to carry. And I had become a shadow of who I used to be, someone who laughed less, someone who dreamed less, someone who forgot what it felt like to simply exist without fear, without pressure, without shrinking beneath the world. And as I reached the end of the road, I paused just long enough to feel the ache in my chest. But this ache was different. It was not the ache of being trapped, it was the ache of release, the ache of beginning again, the ache of hope softly unfolding in a heart that had been bruised too many times. And I knew that even though I had nothing with me except a small bag and a heart stitched together by trembling hands, I still had something more powerful than everything I left behind. I had courage, and courage, even in its smallest form, is enough to change a life. I kept moving forward, feeling the cool night air brushing against my skin, and with every breath I took I whispered silently to myself that I deserved peace, that I deserved safety, that I deserved to live without fear. And it felt strange to even think those words, because for so long I believed that surviving meant staying where I was, enduring what I endured, carrying what I carried. But now I understood surviving sometimes means walking away, even when your feet tremble, even when your heart aches, even when your mind screams to turn back, because turning back is easier, familiar, safer in its pain. But I had reached a point where pain had become too familiar and too heavy, and if I stayed I would never find the strength to breathe freely again. And so I walked deeper into the night, away from everything that once claimed to love me but forgot to protect me, away from the walls that echoed with silence louder than any words, away from the place where my dreams had withered before they had a chance to bloom. And as the distance grew, I felt the first spark of something I had forgotten long ago, something soft, something gentle, something like hope blooming quietly inside me, like a fragile flower pushing through the cracks of a forgotten garden. And with that tiny spark I felt just brave enough to keep going, to trust that tomorrow would be kinder than yesterday, to believe that healing was possible even for someone like me. Morning light slowly crept across the horizon, painting the sky with soft shades of gold and pale rose. And as I walked along the quiet path that led away from everything I once knew, I felt the night slowly slipping off my shoulders like an old heavy coat, and for the first time in a long time I could feel the warmth of a new day touching my skin gently, as if the sun itself understood the weight I had been carrying and wanted to offer me a little comfort. And the world around me looked different, brighter, softer, freer, not because anything outside had changed, but because something within me had taken its first fragile breath of freedom. The air tasted new and clean, and every little sound of the morning felt like a whisper of hope. The distant rustle of leaves, the soft chirping of birds, the quiet hum of life waking up. And as these small sounds filled the silence inside me, I felt myself slowly unfolding like a tired flower that had been waiting too long for light. And with every step I took, I realized that leaving was not just an escape, it was a return to myself, a slow, gentle return to the person I had lost underneath years of fear and silence and staying small and pretending that everything was fine. My legs were tired and the road was long, but the heaviness in my heart had shifted into something else, not light, not yet, but softer, more bearable. And I found myself looking ahead instead of behind, allowing the future to stretch out before me like a long river flowing toward places I had never seen and dreams I had never dared to imagine. And as I walked, I remembered the moments when I had almost left before, the times when I packed my bag only to unpack it again because fear had wrapped its cold fingers around my courage and whispered that I would never survive outside the life I knew. But today the fear felt smaller, weaker, fading behind me with every mile I put between myself and the place that had kept me trapped. Hours passed slowly and I found myself in a small quiet town nestled between low hills and winding roads, a place that smelled of warm bread and morning dew and something so peaceful that it touched a tender part of my soul. And for a moment I stood still, letting the gentle rhythm of this new place soak into me, and suddenly it hit me how long it had been since I felt safe, since I stood somewhere without feeling the tension of being watched or judged or held back. And the simple sight of strangers moving quietly through their morning lives filled me with a strange calm, as if the world was reminding me that life could be gentle, life could be kind, life could be different. I sat on a wooden bench near a small park and watched children run freely, their laughter stretching through the air like bright ribbons, and it made my throat ache with a bittersweet feeling, because once I had laughed like that, once I had run freely without fear, without caution, without the weight of shadows behind me. And sitting there I felt tears slowly rising, not from sadness but from a quiet grief for all the years I had lost, the years I had spent surviving instead of living. And the tears slipped down my cheeks, silently warm, gentle, like a soft rain finally breaking after a long dry season. And with each tear I felt something releasing, something loosening, something healing in a way I never expected. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, letting the world settle into my lungs, the scent of freshly cut grass, the warmth of the sun, the soft hum of distant conversations. And in that small moment I felt an unfamiliar sense of belonging, not to the town, not to the people, not to any place outside, but to myself. And it was a strange, beautiful feeling, a reminder that I was still here, still breathing, still capable of rebuilding the pieces of my heart one quiet sunrise at a time. The next morning arrived with a soft glow, the kind that gently wraps itself around your senses and tells you that the world is offering you another chance, another beginning, another breath. And as I opened my eyes I felt a strange mixture of calm and uncertainty swirling inside me like two rivers slowly learning to meet and flow together. And for the first time in years the uncertainty did not scare me, because it was filled with possibility, not fear, filled with hope, not doubt. And I realized that the road ahead was still long, but the heaviness in my chest had begun to lift like a curtain slowly rising to let the light in. I stepped out of the small inn and the air felt cool and fresh against my face, carrying with it the sense of damp earth, morning tea and distant flowers. And as I walked through the town I noticed little details I had been too tired to see the day before, the way sunlight danced across windows, the soft chatter of people beginning the day, the slow peaceful rhythm of a place untouched by the storms I had escaped. And each small detail felt like a gentle reminder that a life without fear was not only possible but waiting quietly, ready to embrace me whenever I felt strong enough to reach for it. I wandered toward a narrow path leading out toward the hills beyond the town, and the path twisted through wild grass that brushed against my legs with every step, and the wind whispered through the trees, carrying bits of my old fears away with it, piece by fragile piece. And as I walked higher the world around me opened wide, revealing the valley below like an endless stretch of green, gold and shadow. And standing there at the top of the hill I felt something shifting deep inside me, something old, something tired, something that had held me back for far too long. And it slowly loosened its grip until I felt the weight slide off my shoulders and fall away into the wind. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, letting the fresh air fill the hollow spaces inside me, spaces that had once been filled with fear and hurt and uncertainty. And for a moment I simply stood there, letting the sunlight warm my skin, letting the wind tug softly at my hair, letting the world remind me that I was still alive, still moving, still capable of healing. And in that stillness I understood something that had taken me years to realize, that leaving had not been an act of running away. Leaving had been an act of choosing myself, choosing my safety, choosing my peace, choosing a life where my heart could beat freely without the constant pressure of survival. As I walked back down the hill, I felt a calm, steady rhythm settling into my steps, and I knew that something inside me had changed quietly but deeply, as if a new foundation had begun to form beneath my feet. And when I reached the town again, I felt a soft smile lifting the corners of my lips, a smile I had not felt in far too long, and every person I passed seemed to mirror a little warmth back at me, as if they could sense the shift in my spirit, the small rebuilding happening within me, one gentle breath at a time. Later in the evening, I sat on a wooden bench near the small park, once again watching the sky turn from gold to blue to deep velvet, and the children who had played earlier were gone, leaving the park quiet and peaceful. And as the wind rustled softly through the trees, I let myself think about the life I left behind, the broken pieces, the unspoken pain, the years spent shrinking myself to fit inside the walls others built around me. And instead of feeling the familiar ache, I felt something new, a soft acceptance, a gentle acknowledgement of the hurt, and a tender gratitude for the strength that had finally carried me away from it all. The stars slowly began to appear one by one, scattered across the sky like tiny fragments of hope, and I gazed at them, feeling a quiet connection, as if each star held a small piece of my journey, a small piece of the courage that had grown inside me step by trembling step. And as the night deepened, I realized that I was no longer afraid of the future, no longer afraid of the unknown, no longer afraid of choosing myself, because for the first time I knew that survival was not the end of the story, it was the beginning of everything that would follow. When I returned to my room at the inn, I stood for a moment by the window looking out at the sleeping town, and I let my heart rest in the peaceful silence filling the room. And in that silence I made myself a soft promise, a promise to keep moving forward no matter how slowly, a promise to honor the strength it had taken to leave, a promise to rebuild my life with gentle hands and open spaces, a promise to never again let fear decide my future. As I lay down on the small bed, the quilt warm against my skin, I felt a deep calm settling over me, a calm that wrapped itself around my bruised heart with delicate tenderness. And before I closed my eyes, I whispered silently that I was proud, proud of the journey, proud of the courage, proud of choosing to walk away, proud of surviving, and proud of becoming someone who believed in the possibility of peace. Sleep came softly drifting over me like a comforting tide, and in that final moment before dreams took hold, I knew with absolute quiet certainty that leaving had saved me, and that the path ahead, no matter how long, no matter how unknown, would finally belong to me, to my healing, to my rebirth, and to the life I had always deserved.